So I will now introduce the rest of the panel. We have Brent, who is a principal at M13, and Stefania, an influencer with over 500,000 followers on TikTok. I'll hand it over to Brent and Stefania to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Tanya. Sure, I'll start. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Brent, I'm a principal at M13. Just a little bit on us. We're an early stage venture fund based in Los Angeles, but we have offices both in LA and New York. We invest early, typically in the seed and Series A, and exclusively in consumer technology businesses. And our investment thesis is really based in investing ahead of changing consumer behavior across the largest areas of consumer wallet share. So for example, health, food, mobility, and then a big focus on discretionary spend as well. And we're very fortunate enough to be early investors in Clash as well. So we're excited, as Tanya said, to join them on the journey.
Hi guys, my name is Stefania Gumliza. I'm a YouTuber, Instagrammer, TikToker, Twitch. I do everything pretty much on social media. I primarily focus on basketball content, but I kind of do some gaming, lifestyle, and pretty much whatever, whatever I want. One of the concepts that I'm most known for is carrying a hoop around cities and playing 1v1 with men in the street. So yeah.
I love that. And do you win?
Yeah, I tend to win a good amount, so.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, it's great to have everyone here today. So audience, joining via Zoom, please feel free to ask any questions you may have. For those on Clubhouse, unfortunately, we won't be able to address any questions, but hopefully we'll be able to cover some of them in our conversations. But yeah, so we'll kind of get going. We were really the first generation, I would say, to grow up with social media, right? So I remember in high school, it was just really about sharing thoughts. I remember I used to type in third person and be like, Tanya is eating an apple. And I thought that was really cool. Over the years, obviously, influencers, becoming an influencer became a real career, which is absolutely incredible and awesome. I'd love to hear about, your journeys leading to this. So maybe PJ and Stefania, how did you guys get involved in social media and kind of what led you here?
So should I go first?
Yeah.
All right. Well, gentlemen first. We don't typically do that. So I actually started as a digital marketing consultant was my sort of first role into anything marketing. And I was also working on my own e-commerce site at the time. I had a hat site that sold hats, and I dabbled in influencer marketing just as a test, because I was, as a full stack marketer, you're always testing, trying to find the source of the best cost per click, the lowest cost per conversion, that sort of thing. So I got started influencer marketing, and it was extraordinarily successful, like orders of magnitude, like 10x better than any other channel that I experimented in. And then I just saw that industry back in 2013 as extremely nascent and as potentially a huge opportunity. And I decided to devote all my time to figuring out how to solve problems in that industry, and ended up building a company in that industry and building some software in that industry. It's grown tremendously. I think it hasn't, from a startup perspective, I think it's a relatively low barrier of entry field to be in. So we see a ton of different agencies and platforms and things just crop up and sprout up all the time. So it's a very scattered, sort of decentralized space, but nevertheless, it's been an extremely exciting ecosystem to work in. I've met and built relationships with awesome creators over the years, and it's been extremely rewarding to work in that field.
Oh, Stefania, you might be on mute.
Sorry. So basically I began on social media back in 2000, I want to say 2016, 2017. When I began, obviously I wasn't at the place that I am now. Started from zero, just wanted to do basketball content, started putting out some videos. People, you know, liked what they saw. And it just kind of started growing from there. But a lot of what I've built up is like super intentional. So I've taken like a very different approach, I think, in terms of how I view my brand on social media, and like how I can build to not just serve like my audience, but also serve brands that I like work with. And so from there, you know, I grew on Instagram first, transitioned to TikTok when it came, probably back in January 2020, and then YouTube around the same time as well. And just have kind of been growing from there, trying to build up my following across all platforms.
Yeah, awesome. And I love the fact that you also, you know, see yourself as a brand, right? So I think that every single influencer, you know, has their brand, and you guys have really developed an incredible understanding of your audience, which is something I think that, you know, brands could do and learn from as well. So, so yeah, the next question I have is, you know, how have you seen kind of the social media landscape change? So PJ, of course, mentioned this during your presentation, but in terms of like as an influencer yourself, Stefania, you know, what was it like working with brands, let's say, you know, 2 years ago or 3 years ago versus how it is today?
Yeah, so I actually just started kind of monetizing my platform 2020, January 2020. I went full-time content creator. And so prior to that, I didn't even really understand how to connect with brands. Like I at that point, I still had, you know, maybe 100,000 on Instagram or something before that, right? But I just didn't understand how people monetize. I didn't understand how you go about, you know, connecting with brands. How do you get these brand partnerships, you know? And I remember it was like October 2019 was my first brand partnership. Under Armour had reached out to me and they're like, hey, do you want to do this like event? And I was like, okay, cool. And then they're like, after I agreed to it and everything, they're like, yeah, by the way, you got to run like 5 miles. And I was like, oh, guess I have to figure out how to do that. And so, you know, I trained for like 2 weeks to just try to figure out how to run. I never ran more than a mile in my life. Like I do sports, but I'm not a runner. Like it's not my thing. So I had to figure out how to basically pull this off. But at that time, you know, it was like so exciting to me because I was like, wow, like this is my first real brand partnership. You know, I think maybe it was like a $2,000, $3,000 deal or something. And I don't know, you know, like I was like, oh, this is the best thing in the world. Someone paid me to put like a post up. And so, you know, that happened in October 2019, 2020, like January 2020 is when my YouTube blew up from, you know, I think it was like 5,000 to like 80,000, literally in the span of like a month. And then I started doing YouTube as well, was making money off of YouTube. That was interesting to see because it was like, now it didn't rely on a brand. It solely relied on like what content I put out and how much I wanted to put out. And, you know, like I was more in charge of whether or not I made like a decent amount of money on YouTube or not. From there, TikTok also kind of blew up for me too. Over 2020, I went from like 0 to like 540,000 or something where I'm at now. And, you know, I started seeing more brand partnerships more towards the later in the year of 2020. I think in the beginning of 2020, brands especially were not really like sure what was going on with TikTok. And I don't think they were particularly, you know, keen on working with TikTokers at that point. However, you know, I'm seeing like a huge shift. A lot of my brand partnerships now are coming through TikTok as well. And then Instagram, pretty much from the start, it's always been like the spot where I've made like most of my brand partnerships. So Instagram is definitely my like bread and butter at this point. That's where I think most brands go to try to do both long-term and short-term projects and campaigns. And I've seen like over the past year, especially with like my following pretty much doubling from beginning of 2020 to the end of 2020, from like 100 something thousand to like 275,000 this year. You know, I've seen a huge increase in brand partnerships on that front as well. So there's definitely like a huge, I've noticed like a strong shift towards working with more influencers throughout all platforms.
Yeah, super interesting. And I love that you say, you know, like Instagram's the bread and butter. And I'm sure, you know, only maybe 2 years back, people were saying, whoa, Instagram's kind of new and weird. And we, you know, we don't want to go there either. But it's awesome to see kind of the uptick in brands wanting to work with influencers also. So switching gears a little bit, maybe I'd love to get kind of a different perspective, the investor's perspective. So Brent, what's your current kind of investment thesis in the consumer space or the social media space? And how has the pandemic impacted it?
Yeah, that was great, by the way. I think it's fantastic to hear directly from the creators themselves, right? And hear their pain points. And that's something that really interested me in Clash in the first place, is they were all creators, right? And so they knew the pain point intimately. So from my hat, in my chair of investing in these platforms, one thing you'll see is there's a ton of them now, right? There are a ton of them coming up because there's a nice white space being created in the ecosystem from a lot of the legacy social media platforms, the Instagrams, TikTok, TikTok's a little bit newer, but I'll still put it in there with the big guys, Facebook, where, you know, somewhere along the line, they've switched focus from the creator and the content to now more on, you know, they're publicly traded companies. And so they have different constituents, they have different stakeholders that they need to appease. And how do you do that? Quarterly earnings. How do you, you know, increase quarterly earnings, revenue targets? And the main way of doing that for those platforms today is through ad revenue, right? They monetize on ad revenue. And so you're optimizing for a certain thing. You're optimizing for more eyeballs, and somewhere along the way, you lose sight of the actual creator themselves, right? And catering to them. And then all of a sudden, you have folks like Stephania coming to your platform, and they don't even know how to monetize, right? They have all these following, and they have no idea how to monetize because your platform is not geared towards them. And by the way, those platforms are great, right? And they do some things very, very, very well, but somewhere along the line, they've lost sight of the creator. And so when we look at it from an investment perspective, we like this white space of, you know, finding tools and services that allow creators to do what they love to do on either a part-time or a full-time basis, right? And so what that means to me is they're basically able to make a living, right? Maybe it's not hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, maybe it's just a side gig, but at least on a part-time or full-time basis, they're able to, you know, make a decent income. And that stat that PJ shared around, you know, most folks on YouTube, I think this stat was for YouTube specifically, 97% of the YouTube traffic, right, 97% of YouTube creators are making below $17,000, right? And I think the federal poverty line is just a little bit under that. So most people on YouTube are not making above the federal poverty line, right? So there's a problem with that. And so what I look for in the creator economy space specifically is tools and services that will allow creators to monetize better, right? And one way to do that is directly through their fan base, which I think is such an easy concept, and I think it's very natural for a lot of us. But that's kind of where we focus. And you know, just to put this creator economy industry into perspective and give it some numbers and size, you know, the latest numbers show that it's about 50 million creators in the United States. And this is an industry that was essentially non-existent 10 years ago. And it's one of the fastest growing business segments. So when I think of fastest growing, that part is key to me as an investor. I think of 10 years from now, where is this segment going to be? And I want to invest in the tools and services that are, you know, benefiting from that tailwind. And so, you know, outside of monetization, what we look at from an investment thesis, you know, just that real focus of monetization, we really look for founder market fit. And I think that's key. And that, that was what I shared at the beginning when we came across PJ and Brendan and the rest of the Clash team. They'd been creators, they'd worked with creators, they knew the pain point intimately, and that led them to have an unfair advantage in building a really great tool and service that caters towards all creators, not just the top 3%, but that long tail 97% that can really do better in monetization.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And, it's a really interesting kind of thesis, I guess. Also because, you had this huge, it's like this a similar pattern whereby, the gig economy didn't exist 10 years ago or 20 years ago, right? Now the gig economy is one of the largest growing, pools of the workforce. And then, moving forward, we're seeing kind of influencers become that next step of the gig economy as well. Awesome. Yeah. So another question, I guess, like you mentioned, kind of, you love the tools that help influencers, monetize directly from their fans. So I guess this might be a question more to PJ. In the new world of direct monetization, how can brands get involved if essentially, the relationship is a lot closer, and often, brands might be left out of that?
Yeah, so well, I'm actually going to share real quick. I have one idea. I think that might work, and then I'll do something more specific to what we're doing, and then I'll answer the question more generally. So we're currently partnering with brands to help facilitate our launch of Drops. So as I mentioned earlier, Drops is our in-app payment system where fans can reward creators directly in micro amounts. What we're doing here during the launch of Drops, where we actually implement this feature live on the platform, brands will have the ability to sponsor a drop pool, and then individual users will be able to claim micro amounts as basically as a gift from the brand, and then use the money that they claim to then go and use the drop system to actually go and give that money back to a creator. So this way, to get the ecosystem rolling, we're going to have brands come and sponsor, say brands that want to say, hey, we want to be forward facing, we want to be seen as an early adopter in the creator space, we want to support this sort of new wave of creator economy. We're going to basically put up some, we're basically going to pre-fund this drop launch so the users can come on, claim a small amount of money, and then give that back to any creator on the platform that they see fit. And for the brand, it's really an opportunity to be seen as an innovator in the creator economy. Engage with audience in a new way, engage with creators and fans in a new way, and actually where the person that's receiving the drop from the brand actually gets to see and interact with the brand. And for the creators, it sends a very, very important signal to the creators that this is a brand that's really focused on working with creators and is doing things the right way. For the brand, the huge benefit is all of the creators that interact with the brand, and all the creators that receive drops from this brand obviously get it builds brand awareness amongst the creator community, which is huge. And it's an opportunity for brands that believe in this to be a real first mover in the market. So it's something that that we're really excited about. More generally for brands, I think getting involved with creators in a more intimate level makes sense. So, whether it, be brands creating product lines, co-creating product lines alongside creators, I think that's something that I look to see more of, in the next few years. Brands working with creators to help, and creators audiences to help generate more user-generated content and less ads. I think that's another way where I see sort of the brand and creator space changing and evolving over the next couple of years. But yeah, definitely think it's going to look different than just your standard traditional sponsored posts, which certainly isn't going to go away anytime soon. But I do think some innovation is coming and is necessary.
Yeah, and totally agree. We were actually following this startup recently called Millions. They're still in stealth, and what's interesting about them is similar to actually this Drops concept, was that they raised money, and rather spending money on advertising, they actually decided to just give it straight to their Twitter followers. So if you follow them on Twitter, they essentially say, hey, here's a little bit that you can win or whatnot. And I see that as like a way to create a more direct and engaging relationship with the consumer, which I think that, is something that the drops also can achieve. So do you think that I'm seeing this new trend of kind of, rather than going through these huge ad platforms, you're almost like creating a more intimate experience with the end consumer and going directly and giving the money and the power to the people. Do you think this is maybe indicative of, a larger social trend, just that closeness and the one-to-one direct relationship?
Yeah, that's really where it seems to be going. I think it's less about the impersonal, being one follower of many, and really just being a true fan, being a super fan, being a supporter. And for creators, I think it's also important to, we look at other things like what brands stand for, and you look at Twitter and all the brands that gotten canceled recently. It's more than just the commerce. It's really about the ethics of the brand and who the brand stands with, who the brand chooses to support and align with, and what brands creators choose to support and align with. And we're going to see that continuously evolve, more and more over time as well. And I think consumers demand, more than they demand radical transparency from brands. And the last thing I think I see changing as well is brands becoming almost more creators themselves. Where I think the brands that are doing social the right way are the ones that are they're making awesome and engaging content. They're working with creators and they're co-creating content, and they themselves are becoming almost their own like media outlet or their own content creator themselves. So I think also I think we'll see more of that. So more brand creator collaboration, and I think for the smart brands and the forward-thinking brands, the ones that really see this trend happening as well will get involved early and will do whatever they can to get a little skin in the game while this space is still very, very much changing and up for grabs.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I remember seeing kind of Popeyes go viral because they started, they were like, y'all good on like a tweet against Chick-fil-A or something like that. And it's just like giving that brand such an interesting voice and a character. And, we're seeing kind of how powerful, if you do really utilize social media correctly, that can be. Another question that we actually have from the audience, and this is kind of, to the whole panel. Have you had any problems with Google or TikTok? This might be more to Stefania. How much do you trust them to control the relationship between you and your audience? And what can they do to help build more trust in the future?
Are you asking from a privacy perspective, or from what type of perspective is that?
Yeah, I would probably say likely privacy, but also, it could just be, I guess, like distribution to your audience. Like I'm guessing that I'm seeing that like a lot of like, for example, TikTok algorithms, it's like often kind of.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times creators are actually, this is the problem with most platforms. Okay. A lot of times we're punished for working with brands. So like I've been shadow banned on pretty much every platform at this point at some level. And what I've seen is like, especially like Instagram or TikTok, right? The second you put like paid promotion or ad or sponsored post and it's not done through the app, like right away, you're not getting the same type of engagement, right? So like recently I had a Papa John's deal on TikTok. Papa John's put money into it. So that post did really great, right? Because they backed it with some kind of money through TikTok, and TikTok pushed it, and it was like an 8 million view video, right? But then I've had other projects where it's like they're not going directly through TikTok. It's done like directly with me, and those get like shadow banned, and I'm shadow banned for weeks afterwards, right? So like I think sometimes the struggle for a creator is like, for one, like, are you willing to get shadow banned for this post? Is it worth it? But also it's just like a matter of trying to, navigate what's allowed on these platforms and what, you know, what space you can move into and what space you can't. In terms of privacy, if that's what the question was about, I'm in the social media space. I have no expectation of privacy at this point. Like, I kind of put myself in that position, I suppose. But yeah, outside of that, I would say that there's some issues in terms of, you know, reach of your own audience and like being able to push content to your own audience. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
It might be helpful for the audience. What is shadow banning and why is it so consequential to you?
Yeah, so shadow banning is basically when a platform deems your page as either inappropriate or they've put like a mark on your page pretty much, right? And they're like, okay, this page has done this wrong. Maybe it's gone against some kind of term of their agreement, or they just don't like what you put out. And because of that, we're not going to show your post to the same amount of audience. And that could be like, not just like Explore, that could also be your own audience as well. So like now you're in a position where your own audience that you've built up, that you've like grown, can no longer see the posts that you're putting out. And because of that, it doesn't feed it to the algorithm. Like that post won't get pushed further in the algorithm for it to be seen by people outside of your reach as well. And so that can be very frustrating because obviously as a creator, like your whole purpose is to create content that people see and like your audience sees and people outside of your audience sees. And, you know, especially if you're trying, like you put all that time and effort into creating those pieces of content and they're not being seen, it can be, you know, both frustrating and also costly from like a monetization perspective as well. Like if your posts aren't engaging the same way. I luckily, you know, I have high engagement, I guess, especially with the size that I have. And so I think when you guys are talking about like super fans and like true fans and everything, I would say I'm pretty lucky in a sense that like people are like consistent, even if I didn't post yesterday at all. Like I didn't post a story, I didn't post a feed, I didn't post anything. And I have people in my DMs like, are you good? Like, why didn't you post yesterday? Like, is something wrong? Like, you know, and so I think it's kind of cool to see, like, I guess from my own audience, like I have a lot of super fans who are constantly checking my page. So I typically don't have, you know, even when I'm shadow banned, I still get decent engagement, especially on Instagram because they're continuously checking for me. But it can be frustrating, like on a platform like TikTok, where it's like, you don't go to check your favorite profiles, right? Like they just come up in your For You and you see it. So that's just kind of like a difference between platform as well.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And that's super interesting. I think I've heard a lot of kind of concerns around like the YouTube algorithm changing, the TikTok algorithm, really, I guess like them having so much control over the creators as well. And like, you know, how many people see the content.
Yeah. So when it comes to algorithms, it's kind of one of those situations where you're like, okay, yeah, it's changed, but you can't really do anything about it. Right. So like you try to navigate the algorithms as best as you can. So you try to, you know, look at it and be like, okay, this is what is going on right now. Like, how do I, you know, create content that can best serve this algorithm? But at the end of the day, it's like, nobody knows what the algorithm actually is, right? Like, I don't know. I have guesses like, oh yeah, if I do this, this might work. Or if I try this, like, I think at one point Instagram had like, if you tag Indonesia or something in your like location, like it was like showing it to more people or something. So like, you know, there's like little things here and there that you'll hear about. But at the end of the day, it's like, you can't really do anything about what the algorithm is. And so because of that, you just have to continue to just put out content that you think is solid and, you know, just hope that it does well, I guess. I tend to like not really pay attention too much about like algorithms and what's going on with that. You would drive yourself crazy if you did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
we focus a lot on the monetization issues, right, with the big platforms. I think just zooming back, the big platforms do something extremely well, right? They provide an audience and they allow you to gather a following, which is essential for any creator, right? But as I see more and more creators joining this movement, right now it's 50 million, it's the fastest growing segment. And so in 5 years, I don't know what that number is going to be, but it's going to be much larger. And incentives just aren't aligned right now, right? If you don't get the right approvals and you don't go through the right platform steps, you get shadow banned, you get punished. That's bad for you as a creator, and that's bad for the brand as well. And so what I love and what I see in this movement in the next phase, the next few years for monetization, is this highly engaged super fan that is very interested in what you're doing, that will DM you if you miss a day, and that really care about what you're talking about, right? And if you have 100,000 followers, maybe that's only the top 1%. Maybe that's only, 1,000 people. But if you are a brand and you partner with a creator that is going directly to those 1,000 people, they intimately care about what you talk about. They intimately care about what you feel and use and wear and eat and all of that. And so I think it's such a unique way to engage with a very highly, followed fan base. And the ad spend and the brand partnerships, those aren't going to go away. In fact, those are only going to increase, right? As more people join these platforms, those have a place. But there are much more opportunities for brands to partner with creators to monetize directly from their, highly engaged fan base.
Yeah, I like what you said there too. Like, I think there's this like big misconception about like how creators should create, right? And I think a lot of times people think like creators need to be this like unattainable person, and like there's a huge disconnect, right? So like a lot of times you see influencers and you're like, wow, like that's an influencer, like, they live this type of lifestyle, they're like this type of person. Like it's like a really, idolized type of way of like viewing a person, right? And this is kind of what I was saying in the beginning, where like I've taken a different approach to how I create, and the type of brand I've built for myself is more, how do I relate to people, right? Like how do I connect with my audience from a personal level, so they're no longer looking at me as like an idol, but they're looking at me as like a person they want to be friends with. And I think that's really important in terms of, brands as well. Like when I partner with brands, now it's no longer, Steph, my idol, is telling me go like check this brand out. It's Steph, my friend, is telling me to go check this brand out. And I think that relationship with my audience allows it to be, a more personal relationship where they feel more connected to what I have to say about these brands, right? And I think like when it comes to the brand partnerships and everything, from like a brand perspective, you also have to figure out how to navigate in terms of trying to, show your consumers like that you are connected with them, which is why like, brands like Chick-fil-A and brands like Wendy's, who are consistently on social media, they do really well because people like kind of view them as like their friends, like they watch their tweets, they're like engaged with their tweets, they talk to them on social media. Like that's super important if you're trying to build like these relationships. Because I think the day of, these like unattainable influencers is passing. Like when you think of like influencer, you think of like that travel influencer who like has like the perfect photos and perfect everything, and like, they're telling you to buy this like whatever, and you're just like, I don't even know who you are, you just live this perfect lifestyle, like I don't know how to connect with you on that. But now it's kind of a shift into like more of like, how do I feel connected to this person or this brand? So I think I liked what you said there, Brent.
Yeah. So I think you actually, answered one of the comments. So one of the comments says that from Naz, he says that he's following you, Stefania, and he mentioned that your content's really sincere, and you did touch on kind of creating that intimate relationship as a friend rather than someone who you can't relate to. So I I think that's also a very interesting, way to connect with people. And that I think that brands in the future should also definitely take note from influencers to create a better relationship with their fans.
Thank you, by the way.
So, maybe wrapping up, but leaving everybody with one last question before we kind of leave. So, to think about how long social media has been around is crazy because it's only been around for about 10 years, 12 years, right? Which is insane. When we were born, this didn't exist. None of this existed. So what do you envision or hope for the industry in, let's say, 5 years from now? From the perspectives, we've got kind of the perfect trio here from the perspective of influencers, from an investor perspective, as well as from, a platform perspective.
Maybe I'll start here. So I think right now I see a shift, like definitely a strong shift from even the last year. So hopefully, that shift continues over the next 5 years so that I can continue doing what I'm doing. But yeah, like I do think there's opportunity for brands to work more directly with social media influencers. Because I think right now, like the way that brands market is like, they have like a segment for paid media, and then they have a segment for like influencer marketing. And like, I think that needs to go away just completely. Because what I see is like, if you find the right creators, right, you no longer need paid media. Like you can create via that influencer who actually creates solid content, and you can push that marketing budget from the paid media into this instead. Because like when brands approach me, like they approach me for like a mix. Like they know when they come to me, they're getting solid content, but they're also getting an audience to push that content to, right? And I think that's kind of like a shift that I do want to see continue over the next 5 years, where brands are no longer being like, okay, influencer marketing is different from paid media marketing because like the influencer will just post. Like, no, like I'm not taking a picture of your thing and just putting it on my page. Like I'm really taking the time to make content for you that I think will like best highlight what you're doing. And so, I think that shift is something that I'm excited for over the next 5 years. Hopefully that's something they are open to and start, embracing a little bit more. And then also, in terms of like platforms like Clash, like finding different ways to monetize and, having more opportunity for influencers and, people in like the creator space to be able to, take their platforms and be able to make a living off of them, even if they're not at the level, like, because at this point, like I'm going to be pushing past a certain level, right? Like you guys are talking about capital C creators, and that's where kind of like I'm in at this point. But I also want to see like people who are not at that level, right, being able to create like a lifestyle for themselves, making content and being able to pursue this as an actual career, because it's really fun. Like you get to like basically do, whatever you want every single day, and you actually like what you do, and you're not miserable. So like, it'd be great to see more people be able to participate in that. But yeah, those are kind of my like 5-year goal, I guess, for the creator space.
So where I see things going, right? Well, one, creators are taking up so much more of our attention now. So in the old days, right, you had movies, you go to the movies, you'd watch actors and actresses, you'd watch television. Now we have this sort of Z axis, which is content creators. And now you sort of take out people don't really they won't be going to the movies anymore. So now we're like watching all this content on our phone, and like we're going on social networks on our phone, and then we're switching over or watching Netflix shows at our bed on our phone. So this sort of command for your attention is going to continuously change and shift. And while obviously I don't see produced content like movies and television is not going anywhere, I think creators are going to start to take a bigger share of that. And they have, and they will continue that. I think this trend will continue. So I think we're going to see, more creator-led content, more creator. People come back to watch a YouTube video from a big creator every week, the same way they tune into a TV show. So I think we're going to continuously see more and more of that. From a brand perspective, as a digital marketer, right, you can't look at an advertising channel. You're naturally going to say, what's my cost per click? What's my CPM? What's my cost per acquisition? And how does my apples to apples working with influencers compare against my paid spend? How do I get the cheapest yield? We can't prevent people from asking that question, but I really hope that brands will look at partnership with influencers and collaboration with influencers as less as a digital marketing line item and more as an investment in their overall brand, their branding, their success of their brand, their alignment with creators. So I hope to see more brand creator sponsorship. I hope to see more brand creator co-created products. I hope to see more of brands supporting the creator economy and aligning themselves with creators, and creators aligning themselves with brands, and creating more of that natural alignment that's less pay to play, clicks and cost per click, and more of just something that's a little bit more organic and more wholesome and more meaningful.
Yeah, I guess I'll just finish. I really think you're going to continue to see a proliferation of these platforms that allow consumers, the user, to become creators themselves, right? And if I look back, like if I go the last 5 years and then the next 5 years, the last 5 years, we made comparisons to the gig economy a little bit earlier, and platforms like Uber, they allowed anybody to be a driver or anybody to be a delivery person, just, start your own business that way. The problem is, and the core difference between those gig platforms and social platforms is what you're monetizing. In Uber, you're monetizing your time. You click in for 4 hours, you drive, and you don't get paid for more than 4 hours. Your monetization is based on that time. On platforms like Clash, TikTok, the new creative platforms, you can dance, do a comedy sketch, skate for 4 minutes, and your scale is unlimited. Right? With the new tools the internet broadband provides, you can take that 4 minutes and scale it up unlimited, right? So you're productizing yourself. You yourself, your individuality is the product, which goes way beyond the time that you're actually creating that. And so it's insane just to see the shift towards monetizing yourself, and platforms that are allowing that. I think over the next 5 years, really the ones that are going to succeed are the ones that make it incredibly easy for consumers and users to be that creator themselves, right? There was a time when Stephania was probably just watching YouTube and Instagram and loving the content. And then she thought to herself, well, why can't I do this, right? And had a brilliant idea, taking a basketball hoop around the city. I've watched a few of the videos. They're quite entertaining. It's her creativity, right? She's productizing herself and sending it out to hundreds of thousands of people. And so I think this democratizing access to being a creator is quite powerful, and platforms are just going to get better at that. Just a personal anecdote, over the summer, we hired a wedding photographer to take wedding pictures. And while he was doing it, a kid stopped him and interrupted our session and said that he recognized him from his character on TikTok. And it turns out when COVID hit, our photographer had to stop doing what he was doing, right? Couldn't really take photographs at weddings anymore because they weren't happening. And so he got on TikTok. And between May of 2020 to August of 2020, he amassed a following of 12 million followers on TikTok. And this was from a guy who was a wedding photographer. And he jumped on a platform that allowed him to amass a huge amount of followers in a short amount of time. And I think, going forward, just platforms like Clash are going to allow that. They're going to allow anybody to continue doing what they love doing. It used to be everybody my age, I'm a millennial. When I was growing up, we all wanted to be movie stars or sports stars, right? Not anymore. People want to be creators, right? They want to create content themselves, and platforms going forward, the ones that I'm looking for to invest in, are going to allow anybody that's watching to create themselves.
Yeah, that is, spot on for us as well. We really believe the same thing. There was a crazy stat, like if you ask the current generation of Gen Zers and, the next generation down, would you be an influencer? There's a crazy stat that's like 1 in 4 said, yes, I would definitely be an influencer. And 50% said, yeah, I make videos, so it's already like the proportion of people making videos in the next generation is so high. And I can see that this is just, huge kind of growing market. And I think in, 5-10 years, it's going to also permutate kind of the traditional professions as well. I think in the future, being a VC isn't just about being a VC now, it's about being on Twitter, right? So you need a voice there, you need, an identity online as well. And I think that, in the future, all of this is just going to merge. So super, super excited to be part of this journey. Thank you so much to Brent, PJ, Stefania for joining us today. It was very, very insightful. So we have recorded the video, so, we'll be able to put it online and continue to share our thoughts with other people. But thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure having you all here today.